Deep Rising is a 1998 American action horror film written and directed by Sommers and stars Treat Williams, Famke Janssen, Anthony Heald, and Kevin J. O'Connor. The plot follows Captain Finnegan and his crew escorting a group of mercenaries across the South China Sea. Just another job until they encounter something that they didn't sign up for, something big. Well, guys, like I said, I was in the mood to keep this, Stephen Sommers thing going. At least the stuff of his that I like and have in my collection. And as much as I love the Mummy movies, I might just like this one a little better, for a couple of reasons. First off, it's rated R, so not quite the Disney horror, vibes of the Mummy stuff. It's a little bit more R. It goes a little harder on the horror. Though this is an action movie at heart, I wouldn't call this a full-on horror movie by any means. It still utilizes way too much CGI, which is something that just kind of plagued Stephen Sommers' career. But to his credit, he actually intended for this to be largely, a largely practical effects-driven film. So, when I watch this, I do tend to go a little easier on it, at least, in the effects department. And for being a late 90s movie, this still has, some of those 80s flavors, like 80s action movie flavors that I grew up with. So I kind of have a soft spot for stuff like that, kind of Predator vibes a little bit. So being an 80s kid myself, this story speaks to me for sure. First, in any great action movie like this, you need a great lead, right? You just do with it. Without that, everything kind of falls apart. Sometimes it can still work in movies with, lots of characters. But it's not an issue here. Just like Brendan Fraser, being perfect for Sommers' Mummy films, Treat Williams is a fantastic lead here. He was 46 years old already, and a 25-year-old acting veteran, known for lower budget action movies and a lot of television stuff. He plays John Finnegan, the captain of a small ship of a crew for hire, for people needing ocean transport, with no questions asked. Very Han Solo, which is a character that I always assumed Sommers was a big fan of. I feel like he kind of recreates that character in a lot of his movies. Or at least I say that when it comes to this movie and Brendan Fraser's Rick O'Connell character. So, he's got a small crew of characters, most notably Kevin J. O'Connor. One of those standout 90s, character actors that Sommers always liked to use. And he provides the comic relief here. His Joey character is basically Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and it's fun. He's a fun character. And I remember vaguely recognizing Treat Williams from some random TV stuff from back in the day, but at the time not really knowing him very well. And he's really good. I've always liked him here. He's got that old school leading man charm, of the decades past. And again, the Han Solo indie ruggedness, Indiana Jones, that a younger actor probably just wouldn't have. And I'd say he's more Han Solo than Indy. He's got a ship you can, hire him with, and his personal slogan is, "If the money's there, we don't care." It's awesome. I love it. Well, this time, him and his crew, may have accepted the wrong job, and the dudes that hired him end up hijacking his ship so they could use it to hijack a large cruise ship owned by Anthony Heald's character. And there's more to it that I won't spoil, but it's a fairly entertaining and actually decently written story. Stephen Sommers, he's a decent writer, I think. So basically when everyone arrives at the cruise ship, not even the bad guys at that point are safe because it's already in the process of being attacked, but not by humans. This is indeed a giant sea monster movie, which I love. You guys know I love monsters. I love giant monsters. If you didn't love that, or if you didn't know that, you know it now. So, when it comes to monsters, it's just nothing is more terrifying than what we can, imagine coming out of the fucking deepest parts of the sea. For me, that's the ocean is just pure nightmare fuel, and there's no other way for me to look at it. And the monster is called an octolus. Designed by the mighty Rob Bottin, man. And it is an absolutely fantastic design from the demigod, who gave us the monster effects in The Thing. Rob is royalty, absolute horror royalty, and it was awesome having him here. And I guess now that we can get into the monsters pros and cons, because I was talking about lead actors making or breaking a movie, but what about a monster making or breaking a monster movie? Yeah, absolutely a thing. So I'll start with the cons first because I kind of already talked about it at the beginning, which is the heavy use of CGI, especially with the monster. Again, I do give sort of a pass to Stephen Sommers because he did want a practical monster, but he was told that it would have been too difficult. From what I read, it's a huge ass creature, and I'm sure it would have been a disaster. But I also feel like they could have at least made some changes to keep it practical. But I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. I don't work in that field. It's still an absolute killer design. It just doesn't look super convincing all the time. There is some practical gore though, so for the most part it works. For what you don't get, practical effects with the monster, you kind of get it in some of the gore. Yeah, that said, it's just still incredibly dated CGI, and I have to bring its score down for that reason. With this monster design, though, a semi-convincing looking creature would have been utterly horrifying to look at, and this movie would have gotten at least an 8 out of 10 from me, at least, with a great practical monster. As far as sea creature movies go, though, Deep Rising is definitely one of the better, if not, well, I don't want to say the best, but it's one of the best. It's horror, it's action, and it's got a little bit of those adventure vibes, that Stephen Sommers, I was going to call him Steamer, Stephen Sommers tends to bring. And I do think that his story here is actually decently written, like I said. And I liked how Finnegan and his crew have to deal with the mercenaries, which is a movie just by itself, but then they all have to deal with the monster simultaneously. And, and there's even other characters like the captains of the cruise ship they're all stuck on. And I almost forgot to mention Famke Janssen's character. She plays a thief named Trillian St. James, and her character almost feels a little bit out of place, but she's funny and charming, and her and Treat Williams, bring the romance stuff because you seem to sort of need that to complete a Stephen Sommers movie. Okay, so there's two more things I want to say about the movie. First, and probably the most infamous thing about it, is that it was supposed to basically, and I love addressing this because it's just so weird. It at the end, it was supposed to segue directly into a King Kong remake, of all things. And apparently Sommers intended to direct a reboot, and honestly, I think that could have been really, really cool. He's a good choice for something like that, but it just never happened. And last, I have occasionally seen people call this a Lovecraftian movie because it has a crazy-looking sea monster with tentacles and stuff, and that has always annoyed me. This really is just a monster movie. There isn't anything cosmic or any other elements you would find in a Lovecraft story. So, yeah, you can't call it that. Sorry, guys. So I'm giving Deep Rising a 2.5 out of 4 stars. And my question for you is, should I complete the Stephen Sommers horror catalog and watch Van Helsing? Let me know. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex. Subscribe right now, please.